I'm excited to bring you the next installment of Tora's story. If you missed the prologue episode, you may want to go back and hear the tale of her birth. You'll hear how she came into the world and the mystery of her true parents. Or you can just stay with us now and circle back later. Either way, knowing her origin will definitely deepen everything that you hear today. If you did end up hearing the prologue, then you know Tora's beginning was marked by sacrifice and a destiny that runs deeper than she even realizes. But stories are not made of beginnings alone. They're forged in the world that shapes a child. And the world Tora grows up in, it's not gentle. It's raw, it's unforgiving, and sharp as the wind that howls through the valleys of Norway. Now, keep in mind that this is part of a rough draft. This book will go through significant amounts of edits in order to make it to publishing. Your feedback along the way is more than welcome, and constructive suggestions also welcome. In this opening scene, you're going to meet Tora, not as a warrior yet, but as a girl already marked by the fire within her. You'll see her wrestle with the land, with the boys who mock her, and with the hunger that refuses to let her stay small. This is not just about survival. It's about the forging of someone who is about to step into an epic journey of self-discovery, a journey that will test her spirit, her strength, and even her faith. So, settle in. This is the beginning of the storm. Chapter 1. The hunger inside. The wind, it didn't whisper in the valley. It didn't murmur, nor hum, nor offer a song to those who tilled its earth. No, the wind howled, a great starving thing, tearing at the eaves of the farmhouse, lashing the sheep pens, rattling loose the slats of the wooden fence until it seemed that the whole earth might shake apart. Smoke curled from the chimney, but even that was stolen before it could rise, whipped sideways, thin and ragged, vanishing into the great gray beyond. The air hung thick with the scent of peat smoke and salted fish, of damp wool and the sweat of toil. The stench of survival, clinging to the wooden beams, pressed deep into the furs, buried beneath the dirt of long, unyielding winters. The land did not yield. It did not give. It took, and it took the weak. It swallowed them in the frost, in the wind, in the endless labor of hands cracked like river ice and shoulders bowed beneath burdens too heavy, too ceaseless, too cruel to be borne for long. But Tora was not weak. She had learned young that the land was no friend, no gentle mother to cradle her soft hands and whisper comforts against her ear. No, this land was a beast, one that must be tamed, wrestled to the earth with bare hands and iron will, a thing to be conquered, not trusted. The fields stretched barren beneath the winter sky, nothing but frost-bitten remnants clinging to the frozen ground. The ghosts of last season's crops lingering in the skeletal remains of stalks bent and blackened with cold. The sheep, huddled and shivering, stood silent as tombstones, their wool stiff, their breath rising in slow, steady plumes. And there, Tora, hauling water from the well, her breath misting before her, her fingers raw, red from the rope's bite, no fur-lined gloves, no softness to shield her from the cold, just her hands, worn already at such a young age. Her grip was firm, her stance unshaken as she dragged the brimming bucket up from the darkness below. She did not whimper. She didn't pause. The weight of it meant nothing. She had known hardship before she had known her own name. It was her first language, the first truth the world had ever given her. Before she had known words, she had known work. The ache of her shoulders before dawn, the burn in her legs from running the steep hills, the sting of winter air biting at her cheeks, and she had never feared it. She set the bucket down, exhaled hard, wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. The cold would steal the moisture from her skin before long, turn the sweat to ice, but she didn't care. The farmhouse loomed in the distance, dark against the whitewashed sky. Inside, her parents sat by the fire, their hands folded, their voices low. They were not her parents by blood. That much she did not know yet. But she felt it in the quiet, in the way they never spoke of the day she had come into their lives. They loved her, she supposed, in their own way, in the way of duty, in the way of those who had been given a child, not born of them, and had done what was necessary to keep her fed, to keep her warm, and to keep her alive. But there was a space between them, a thing neither spoken nor touched, a wall built of something she did not yet have words for. They didn't understand her. Not the way she ran when other girls walked. Not the way she climbed where no child, no daughter was meant to climb. And not the way she fought, and oh, how she fought. The village boys had learned young not to challenge her. They had sneered at first, laughing, jeering, calling her wrong, unnatural, cursed. A girl with fists that struck as hard as any boy, with legs that ran faster, with shoulders that bore burdens without flinching. So they had tested her, pushed her, shoved her, first in jest, then in challenge, then in something darker. And she had shoved back, had met their fists with her own, had wrestled them into the dirt, and had sent them home bloodied and bruised, their lips split, their arms aching, their pride shattered beneath the weight of the truth. She was stronger than them. She had felt it, even then, the hunger, that something in her bones, in her breath. It was not a yearning for softness, not a desire for warmth or ease. No, it was a hunger for the fight. She could feel it even now, coiling beneath her ribs like a thing alive, a restless beast that would not be quieted. This life was not enough. The farm, the endless cycles of sowing and reaping, of birthing lambs and slaughtering them, of bending and breaking beneath the weight of the same day lived over and over again. It was not enough. She looked towards the fjord, where the sea stretched out, vast and waiting, its waves clawing hungrily at the shore. She could hear the whispers of the old stories in her mind, the ones told by the village elders, the ones she was meant to forget. Men who sailed beyond the edge of the world, men who carved their names into the bones of history. Men who did not bow, who did not yield, who did not wait for the world to give them what they wanted. Men who took, and she thought, why not me? The wind howled, pulling at her braids, lashing her face, but she did not blink. She didn't flinch. She did not turn away. She would not stay here. She would not rot in this valley, and she would not fade into silence. She was not a girl meant only for tending sheep and living small and dying smaller. No, she had not been born for this. The fire in her blood told her so. She had felt it in the way her body moved, in the way her hands clenched at the thought of submission, in the way her soul reached for something more, something vast, something waiting. And though she did not yet know its name, she could feel its calling. The wind shrieked through the valley, but it did not push her back. It carried her forward. The sky stretched wide and gray that day, the clouds swollen with the promise of winter's first snow. A wind prowled through the valley, snarling at the withered fields where the harvest had long been taken, the earth already hardened with frost. It felt like a world holding its breath, waiting for that final, fatal whisper of ice to blanket it all. Tora ran. Her leather boots struck the frozen ground, each stride a defiant drumbeat. The worn soles biting into the frost-bitten earth, she moved like the wind, cutting through the valley. Relentless, untamed, unwilling to yield. Her breath cut sharply in her chest, but she did not slow. The village boys ran beside her, behind her. Their laughter loud and careless at first, born of smug certainty of those who had never faced real defeat. They had always been the fastest, the strongest, until now. She felt their gaze upon her, felt the flickers of doubt growing in their eyes, curling like thin wisps of smoke in the raw morning air. The oak at the crest of the hill loomed above them, ancient limbs outstretched like the arms of a slumbering god. Tora reached it first. She did not pause, merely leapt, caught the lowest branch and hauled herself upward. The bark scraped her palms and the icy wind snatched at her hair, yet she climbed with the ease of a creature born to conquer heights. Below, the boys scrambled, panting and cursing, their boots slipping on the cold, unyielding trunk. Bjorn managed halfway up before he lost his grip. Fingers clawing in desperation at the empty air, he hit the frozen dirt with a thud, the breath leaving him in a startled gasp. A moment's hush fell, then sharp laughter rose, not from Tora, but from those who had seen a chance to mock someone other than her for once. Bjorn's face twisted, red, first from exertion, then from something deeper, something raw, gnawing at the edges of his pride like a dog worrying at a bone. His breath came sharp and uneven, his fists curling at his side, not from pain but from the sheer injustice of it. She had beaten him. Tora dropped from the branch like an autumn leaf caught in the wind, graceful, inevitable, untouched by the fall. Her boots struck the frozen earth, knees bending to drink in the impact, and she rose in the same breath, unbothered, unbowed. Dust and frost curled at her ankles, the wind tugging at her cloak as if in silent applause. She stretched her fingers as if shaking off nothing more than the chill, as if the climb had been a mere amusement, not a contest that she had already won. Bjorn stumbled upright, spit with fury thick in his throat. "You cheated." Tora arched one eyebrow, mock sympathy playing at the corners of her lips. "Oh, and there I thought I just climbed faster." "You climb like a rat, skithering, scrambling, clawing." His words were venom meant to wound. She smirked, the wind teasing the strand of auburn through the sharp blue of her eyes. "And yet the rat is at the top of the tree while the big, strong ox wallows in the dirt." A few of the boys snickered, though they quickly silenced themselves when Bjorn shot them a glare that could curdle milk. His jaw tightened, his pride bleeding into rage. "You only won because you're small. You climb like a squirrel, like a gnat." Tora clicked her tongue, feigning disappointment. "Bjorn, if you're going to compare me to animals, at least choose one that doesn't get shooed away so easily." She folded her arms, tilting her head. "How about a hawk? That sounds better, don't you think? Or maybe a wolf." Or are those too threatening for you? Bjorn scowled. His whole body wound tight with humiliation. I'd like to see you try that in a real battle, he muttered darkly. She took a step closer, her voice dropping, her grin sharpening like the edge of a newly wet blade. Give me a sword and a reason, Bjorn, and we'll see who's left standing. The air between them crackled, thick with something unsaid, something waiting, something inevitable. Tora smirked, tilting her head just enough to let the wind catch in her hair, her blue eyes glinting with something sharp, something dangerous. She saw the way Bjorn's fists curled, the way his nostrils flared, the way he tried, oh, how he tried to swallow his humiliation whole. She gave him no mercy. That's your trouble, Bjorn. She let the words roll slow and deliberate, savoring the way his scowl deepened. All strength, no sense, like a great dumb ox that charges head first into a fence and then wonders why its skull is cracked. The other boys stifled their laughter, half in awe, half in terror. Bjorn's face darkened, his breath ragged, his pride screaming for blood. And then he lunged. The shove came hard, sudden, unrelenting, not a test, not a jest, but a statement. Bjorn's palm slammed into her shoulder, his strength behind it like the swing of a hammer. She staggered, boots slipping on the frost. Hardened ground, balance lost in the cruel weight of Bjorn's shove. The frozen earth rose to meet her like an unforgiving foe, her heel catching on the uneven dirt, her body pitching backward. A sharp gasp tore from her throat as she hit the ground hard. The breath jolted from her chest. Ice-bitten soil scraped her palms. The sting was sharp, immediate, her fingers digging into the cold earth to steady herself. A breath shuddered through the boys, a single waving exhale misting in the cold, their bodies strung tight between instinct and fear. A flicker of hesitation. Step in, stop him, or let Bjorn carve one more lesson into Tora. Bjorn, one of them said with uncertainty. They had seen him fight before, seen him bloody noses and blackened eyes, but this was different. Tora didn't stay down. She rose, slow, steady, like something unavoidable, as the tide before a storm. Frozen dirt fled from under her boots, breath visible in the cold, her knuckles flush against the tundra for leverage. Everything in her movement spoke of warning, like a storm gathering beyond the horizon, silent but seething, the air thick with the promise of its arrival. No escape, no mercy, only the certainty that when it broke, all would be forced to bow or be swept away. Bjorn smirked, triumph licking the corners of his mouth. What's wrong? Can't take a fall? She met Bjorn's eyes, and in hers there was no fear, only fire. Her eyes burned like winter's edge, sharp and glacial, the color of deep fjords under a storm-lit sky, bright, cold, and unyielding. She answered with a shove of her own. The laughter died on their lips. Bjorn staggered back, his boots skidding. He caught himself, but not before. His face twisted with something darker than mere anger, something wounded, humiliated, determined to restore his pride. Then the fists flew. She did not know who struck first. Perhaps him, perhaps her. It mattered as much as the first drop of rain in the storm. The fight had begun long before this moment, long before fists met flesh and knuckles split skin. It had begun in every glance, every whispered slight, every time she had refused to bow. The first blow caught her ribs, sharp as an iron-tipped arrow, driving the air from her lungs. She staggered but did not fall. The earth shifted beneath her heels, but she planted them firm, braced against the storm. She tasted blood, metallic and bright on her tongue, and grinned through the sting. Bjorn swung, but she was faster. Her fist crashed into his jaw, snapping his head sideways, his breath tearing from his throat in a struggled grunt. The boys hesitated just for a moment, just long enough to feel the first creeping vine of doubt curl around their spines. Then they surged forward. A body lunged at her. She twisted low and quick, seized an arm, and sent him sprawling, the impact shaking the frost-bitten dirt. Another boy reached for her, too slow. She ducked, sidestepped, lashed out, her elbow catching him hard in the ribs. A curse, a gasp. The air swirled heavy with the sting of sweat and blood, and the sharp bite of the earth, and the crackling heat of unrelenting wrath. Bjorn came again, his rage a hammer swinging wild, but she was the wind, between the blows, slipping, striking, unrelenting. Her next strike buried deep in his gut, and he crumpled to his knees, gasping, wheezing, his strength stolen. But there was no pause, no moment to savor it. They came at her, all at once, not one by one, but as a writhing mass of fury and wounded pride. Hands grasped for her, fists swung, curses flew, but she was something else entirely. She did not fight them. She became the fight. A blur of tangled limbs and breathless movement, raw defiance carved into every strike, every shove, every step that refused to give way. They tried to drag her down, to pin her, to remind her what she was supposed to be. But Tora was not what they wanted her to be. She was something greater, something they had never seen before, something they feared without knowing why. And in the end, they fell, one by one. They crumpled, gasping in the dirt, sweat-matted hair falling over bruised brows, fingers pressing against aching ribs, scattered like leaves torn from the boughs in the first howling breath of winter. Tora remained standing, blood on her lip, fire in her veins, breath sharp as the wind that scoured the valley. For one breathless moment, she felt it. The wild exhilaration, the raw, unshackled power, the unshaken certainty that no force on earth could ever bend her. She was the storm that would not break, the fire that would not die. And they knew it. Then she turned and saw her parents. They stood at the edge of the field, silhouettes carved from ice and disappointment, their eyes reflecting neither pride nor admiration, but something that made her stomach drop. Their gaze held no warmth, only a deep, weary shame, as though what she had done was not glorious, but unnatural, as though her victory had revealed something monstrous within her. Her hands, still clenched into fists, felt suddenly foreign. She had not meant to prove she was some freak of nature, only that she could stand her ground. But in their eyes, she saw no understanding, only a silent reproach. That stung more than any bruise on her skin. She could already feel the whispers creeping through the cold, embedding themselves into every crack of frozen earth. Cursed, unruly, wrong. She had fought for something she couldn't yet name, for respect, for the right to exist as she was. And yet here she stood, feeling more alone than ever. The fight was over, but the war, she realized, had just begun. Tora's story reminds us that the fiercest battles, they often begin before anyone notices we're fighting at all. She didn't wait for a grand stage or a legendary raid to prove herself. Her proving ground was the frozen dirt. The ropes that cut her hands and the sneers of those who doubted her. Every day was a test for her. Every hardship became a teacher, as we will see as the story continues. Her journey is a lot like ours. It's a journey of self-discovery, of finding out who we are. And some of the greatest teachers in our lives are hardships, and we learn the most valuable lessons through tough times. Tora's story reminds us that there is something deep within each of us, a gift, a calling, a longing. You were created for a purpose, and you are on a journey of discovery. And so through hardships, through tough times, it is possible to begin to discover who you really are and who you were made to be. And so for Tora, she is beginning to get a hint of the fact that she's different, that maybe she doesn't belong to this fjord, to this valley, and there's something that's waiting beyond. We get a hint of that as she looks out into the vastness of the sea and longs for what's beyond. She's different than her parents, as we have found out in the prologue and even in this chapter, that they are not truly her birth parents. And so she's beginning to understand there's something different there. She is inching closer and closer to discovering who she is. And the first book in this series really is her finding out and figuring out who she is, and the people that she meets along the way, the value that they add to her life as she's leaning into who she realizes that she is. And so in this first chapter, you get a little taste of the world that she lives in, that the valley and the wind, it's alive, and it is in many cases in opposition to not just her, but to everybody that lives there, but that somehow maybe the wind is actually on her side. And you see that her interaction with the wind is usually, almost always, exclusively positive. But even in the times where it might feel negative down the road here in the book, there are still valuable lessons that she's learning from the wind, and there'll be people along the way to teach her some of these lessons. And so she has some raw, natural talents and abilities. She's athletic, she's quick. She may not be stronger physically than the boys or than Bjorn, who will show up many times in this first book here. But she is discovering that you don't necessarily have to be stronger if you are smarter and are quick and tactful. And so she definitely will develop into that tactician as we go through. I hope you enjoyed this. There are many more chapters to come, and we'll sprinkle them throughout the rest of Viking Legacy and Lore podcast periodically. And again, always appreciate feedback. If you want to hear more, I did email a copy of the prologue to everybody that requested. So if you would like to request a PDF of the prologue, if you would like to read it for yourself, please send me an email, vikinglegacyandlore@gmail.com. It's pretty simple. Just send an email and I'll send that on to you and you can read that. I appreciate you listening. Until next time, be bold, be strong, and awaken the Viking in you.